This is the undeniable, undisputed, no questions asked, best fight on this card by a landslide. And I'm going ahead and saying that this is probably going to be fight of the year. I don't care that it's just January. Since this fight got announced, I haven't been able to think about much else. I don't know about you, but this fight is cinema. Absolute cinema. UFC 324 is right around the corner, and today we're going to be breaking down and picking the winner for every single fight on the card. We're going to start with the early prelims, we're going to end with the main event, and we're going to jump straight into the first fight of the night, which is Adam Fugit versus Ty Miller. Now, Ty Miller is coming into this fight as a massive favourite. He's a minus 420 favourite, which makes sense. There's a massive age gap between them. I think it's 12 years between them. Yeah. Ty Miller is 25 years old. Adam Fugit is 37 years old. Adam Fugit has lost 3 out of his last 5. And he's coming into this fight as a plus 310 underdog. Now, both of these fighters are pretty lanky. Ty Miller is 6'2". Adam Fugit is 6'1". Miller's got a 77.5 inch reach compared to Adam Fugit's 77 inch reach. Now, I don't want to spend too long breaking down this fight because a lot of people won't actually really care about this fight. But when you actually look at it, one thing that I do want to point out, Adam Fugit has lost 3 of his last 5. However, the losses have come to Islam Dulatov, Mike Malott, and Michael Morales. It has been loss, win, loss, win, loss. So if we're looking at patterns here, dude, Adam Fugit by crazy, devastating underdog, you never know. I feel like I do know. I feel like he's not going to win. You know, Ty Miller is a very accurate striker, and I don't think Adam Fugit at 37 years old is going to be able to take too many heavy shots before going down. I think if we zoom out and don't overthink this fight, it's a pretty clear Ty Miller win. Probably going to do some bad damage in round 1. Probably going to land the majority of straight punches that he throws, and I can see him getting a finish over Adam Fugit within the first or second round. Now, as I said, I don't want to waste too much time on this fight, so we're going to be moving straight on to the next fight, which is Ricky Turcios versus Cameron Smotherman. Now, one thing I wanted to mention about this fight, Ricky Turcios is coming in almost as a 2-1 underdog in this fight against Cameron Smotherman, who has lost his last 2. And I wanted to point out, Ricky Turcios, within the last 8 years, has only lost to Bernardo Sapai, Raul Rosas Jr., and Ayman Sahabi. That's not bad at all, especially for someone who's coming into this fight as an almost 2-1 underdog. I think Cameron Smotherman's all right, but in general, he doesn't do anything, in my opinion, that's going to crazily set him apart in this fight. I know a lot of people are picking Smotherman, and a lot of people are probably right to pick Smotherman. I probably have a little bias here because I have been a bit of a Ricky Turcios fan. I like Ricky Turcios, right? I'm a Ricky Turcios guy. I like him. He's cool. Peace to the world and all of that shit. I love him. Great vibes. Ricky Turcios is good. And he looked alright when he fought Raul Rosas before, you know, we all know what happened. And I think when we look into this fight, I think Ricky Turcios, as an underdog, he's tricky. We got Tricky Ricky, and I'm going to put some cheddar on Tricky Ricky, dude. I think Tricky Ricky's getting it fucking done. I like Ricky Turcios. I'm taking him as the underdog. Cameron Smotherman, you're going to go 3-0 in your last 3, buddy. I'm sorry. Don't mean to be that guy, but if we're rolling with any of the underdogs in this card, I think I'm taking Ricky Turcios. I don't want to just go favorite. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to just roll with the favorites. I've already rolled with the first favourite, Ty Miller. We're taking Ty Miller. But when we're talking about this fight, we're rolling with the dogs, baby. Moving on to the next fight, we have got the Incredible Hulk. I don't know if any of you saw the interview that Josh Hokit did with the old industry plant Jaden Cable recently, but he's been making the rounds on Instagram, MMA Instagram. And he's got has he got aura? I don't know. People seem to be split. People think, oh, you know, you're doing the Macho Man Randy Savage kind of shit. But most of the fucking heavyweight roster are boring as hell. So let's just sprinkle a bit of excitement in. And Josh Hokit, from what we've seen within his first 2 fights in the promotion, his Dana White Contender Series fight and his debut against Max Jimenez, which took place late last year, is that he's a very fast starter. And he hits hard and he's decently accurate. And when he gets momentum, he really does get momentum. When he fought Uriel back on Dana White's Contender Series, he beat the fuck out of him. Got him to the ground, and he was landing some devastating elbows. Real heavy elbows on the ground. Nasty finish. And then he made his debut against Max Jimenez, and he finished him in the first round. And it wasn't even close. It was over within, like, a minute. He fucked him up. And then you look at the side of Denzel Freeman. Now, Denzel Freeman Before he made his debut last year, people were hyping him up. People were saying big things about him. Oh, he can land a head kick. Oh, he's got good wrestling. And then he fought Marek Bulow, and it was just boring. And in my opinion, he gained very, very little stock. In actual fact, he dropped stock because of the small amount of hype that he was bringing into his debut. I was excited for his debut. We're talking about a new heavyweight in the mix who could potentially be exciting. Won most of his fights by finish. And then he got to the UFC, and it was just... wasn't exciting. I think this is a real clear-cut story of momentum, motion versus no motion. Motion versus no motion. We're getting technical with these fight breakdowns, boys. I don't care if you dislike Josh Hokit. Josh Hokit is a sneaky, sneaky guy in the heavyweight division, and you never know. In a year's time from now, after he's fucked a bunch of guys up, cut a bunch of promos, made a bunch of viral videos, we'll look back at this fight in hindsight and go, why were we ever going to pick Denzel Freeman? We're taking Josh Hokit. I don't think Denzel Freeman's going to be in the UFC for too long. Josh Hokit has a 100% finish rate. He has a 100% finish rate. And we think, is Denzel Freeman going to be the guy to snap that? I don't know. So we're not overthinking this. We're taking Josh Hokit. And I'm taking Josh Hokit by round 2 finish. I think round 2 knockout. I think he catches him. I think the forward pressure is eventually going to wear Denzel Freeman down. And I think Hokit is going to land something heavy, or he's going to get a takedown and look to land those nasty elbows like he did in his Dana White Contender Series fight. And we're going to get one of the best promos of the year at the start of the year. We're taking Josh Hokit by finish. Moving on. We have got Michael Johnson versus Alexander Hernandez. Now, once this fight got announced, I was already licking my lips because I know for a fact that when people are looking at Alexander Hernandez, who is now on a 4-fight win streak, they think that it's a clear-cut win. Now, the odds are a bit more telling. Hernandez is a relatively big favourite at -210. But one thing that we will never forget to do is count Michael Johnson out of a fight. Michael Johnson, plain and simple, fights like a crackhead. And that's a great thing for fight fans. That's a great thing for the Just Bleed community. We turn up in full force when Michael Johnson fights because this guy does not get into a boring fight. This guy just beat Daniel Zellhuber in his last fight. This guy also just beat Ottoman Azaitar and Darius Flowers back to back. He's on a 3-fight win streak. We've got a 3-fight win streak versus 4-fight win streak. And that's interesting because both of these fighters are on significant win streaks. And one thing that I did want to point out, one thing that I wanted to mention that I don't think many people have been covering, Alexander Hernandez's last 2 losses, he was the favourite. He was the favourite against Damon Jackson and he was the favourite against Bill Algeo. And he lost both of those fights by decision. What's also interesting is the fact that his last 2 wins, he was an underdog. So if we're looking at patterns, I like to look at patterns. And the pattern here tells me Alexander Hernandez is a favourite in this fight and he's fighting Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson chins people for fucking breakfast. Michael Johnson has just won his fight against Daniel Zellhuber as a plus 555 underdog. There was a point in time not long ago, 2021, where he was on a 4-fight losing streak. And Michael Johnson was just one of those names that goes back and forward, win-loss, win-loss, loss-loss, loss-loss-loss, win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. And since his last loss to Diego Ferreira, he beat Darius Flowers, as I said, beat Ottoman Azaitar, as I said, beat Daniel Zellhuber, as I said, and the wins have just been getting better. Looking at this fight, Michael Johnson is an underdog. Alexander Hernandez is a favourite. And this is going to be the second underdog of the night that I am taking. We could be proved wrong here. I'm not saying this is a surefire thing. But guess what? I like Michael Johnson, and I like Michael Johnson in this fight. So we're going to pick Michael Johnson in this fight. On that note, we're going to be moving on to the next fight, which is Alex Perez versus Charles Johnson. Now, Charles Johnson, some say most underrated fighter on the roster. This guy, I say that. Charles Johnson is in fact certified, recognized, officially the most underrated fighter on the UFC roster. Now, Charles Johnson is taking a night off from being the prospect killer here. Bearing in mind, he has a KO win over Lona Kavanagh. He has a KO win over Josh Van, current flyweight champion of the UFC. He has a unanimous decision win over Jake Hadley. Aged terribly, but at the time, he had some steam. Beat Azat Maxim. Azat Maxim is very, very good. Azat Maxim is still a very good prospect. At the time of fighting Charles Johnson, Azat Maxim was 15-0. Now on a 3-fight losing skid, but who kicked that off? Who started that shit? The only losses that he has taken is by decision, but he's lost 1 time in almost 3 years, and the loss was to Ramazan Temirov, who, if you didn't know, popped. Now, on the other side of things, we've got Alex Perez. He's a veteran. He's been in the UFC almost 10 years now. And it seems like on the flip side of things, Alex Perez has only really been losing to prospects. Lost to Asu Almabayev back in November 2025. Lost to Tatsu Rataira back in June 2024. Lost to Mohamed Makayev back in March 2024. However, after that fight, he fought Mateus Nicolau, and he went into that fight with not a lot of people picking him to win. And he won that fight by KO in Mateus Nicolau. Now, Mateus Nicolau fought one time after that, back in October 2024, and hasn't fought for over a year since. Both of these fighters are well into unk status at this point, but if we're just looking at the straight up matchup, I think Charles Johnson has way more ways to win. He's a much taller fighter, standing at 5'9", as opposed to Alex Perez's 5'6". He's got a 4.5 inch reach advantage here. And within the last 2 years, he's just been dominating all of the prospects that the UFC have been feeding to him. Personally, I can just see him continuing the momentum. Alex Perez will probably stay in there for the majority of the fight. I think in actual fact, I think it probably goes to a decision. And I think the decision will lean in the way of Charles Johnson. We might be looking at a 3-2 here. Moving on to the next fight on the card, we have got Nikita Krylov versus Modestas Bukauskas. Now, how did you spend your 2025? Because Nikita Krylov spent his 2025 getting flatlined twice, and they were within the space of 3 months. Didn't fight since. Last fight, July 2025. If we look at the flip side of things, Modestas Bukauskas spent his 2025 getting 3 wins. He beat Rafael Caquera, he beat Iwan Cutelaba, and he beat Paul Craig. And he won 2 of them by finish. Took Iwan Cutelaba to a split decision, but it's a win. It's still a win. And as fight fans, one thing that this has told us is that Nikita Krylov is chinny. Modestas Bukauskas has fucking motion right now. And he's from England. I mean, I know he represents Lithuania, but if you hear him in a post-fight press conference, that motherfucker's one of our own. Now, I find this interesting because Krylov is only a plus 125 underdog in this fight, right? Modestas Bukauskas is a minus 150. So the odds makers think that this is a relatively close contested fight. When you look at their physical attributes, they're very, very similar. Similar in height, the exact same height, 6'3". Both of them have around a 76-inch reach. I think the tale of this story is going to be pressure. I think one thing that we've learned from Bukauskas' career, because this guy has suffered from injury. And this guy, I don't know if you follow his socials very much, but this guy, it seems like Bukauskas has a chip on his shoulder, and he's always had a chip on his shoulder. He's always had a point to prove. And I think when he's going in there against a Nikita Krylov, who's dropped 2 in his last 2, both by finish, I think Bukauskas is going to get on the gas early, and I think there's a very high chance that we see Bukauskas win within the first round. I think Bukauskas is live to shut Krylov's lights off in round 1. And you can say I'm biased here. You can say I'm biased, but 86.3% of people on Tapology think Bukauskas is going to win by KO. Now, if you frame it in the way of asking what round do you think that's most likely going to be, I think the majority of people are probably going to say round 1, right? And for that reason alone, I'm not going to overthink this one. I think Bukauskas gets it done. I think he gets it done early. I think Krylov, if he's not fighting for his job already, he will be after this fight, in my opinion. That's my personal pick. I'm taking Modestas Bukauskas by finish early in the fight, round 1. And I think this is going to be the fastest finish on the card, in my own opinion. Modestas Bukauskas by KO is the pick. Moving on to the next fight, we have got the Destruction. Can I just point out as well? Both 6'4", by the way. Both 6'4". Look at the difference. We've got Ateba Gautier versus Andrey Pulyaev. Now, what is going on? Why are the UFC doing this? They're sending Pulyaev out to slaughter. They are sending this boy home on a stretcher. I feel so bad for Pulyaev here because he's just got a win over Nick Klein. But if you watch that fight, he was not winning that fight up until the point where he got the finish. He landed a body shot on Nick Klein and then he put him away. But prior to that, he was getting the fuck kicked out of him. One big telltale thing that I saw in that fight is that Pulyaev was folding to Nick Klein's pressure. Now, that's a real bad fucking thing when you're facing this motherfucker. Tell me that I'm wrong. That's a real bad thing when you're facing this motherfucker. Ateba Gautier has been killing everyone. Ateba Gautier has been finishing everyone that the UFC has put in front of him. And what's terrifying is the fact that he's 23 years old. He's 23 years old. He fought on Dana White's Contender Series where he got a finish in round 2. And then he's fought 3 times in the UFC since where he's won by round 1 KO every single time. Jose Medina, Robert Valentin, Tristan Vines. Robert Valentin had a little bit of... People were high on Robert Valentin for a short period of time after The Ultimate Fighter. But then he dropped 3. And what did the UFC do? They gave him Ateba Gautier. And what did Gautier do? He did exactly what Gautier always does. He completely starched him in the first round. There's only one loss in the career of Ateba Gautier, and it was back when he was 19 years old. It was a split decision, and it was against some guy called Glenn Williams, who is 1-0. Let me just say, right, shout out Glenn Williams. This guy is 1-0, and his only win is against Ateba Gautier back in 2022. Imagine that. Imagine, based on the run that a lot of people think Gautier is going to go on in the UFC. Imagine that, dude. Glenn Williams from Wales. Glenn Williams from Wales, the sledge. Crazy scenes. We're going on a tangent here. We're completely going off on a tangent here. Back to the matchup. As I said, Andrey Pulyaev was losing to Nick Klein before he pulled out the finish. Now if he did in fact not find the finish in that fight, it looked like he was going to lose. And in which case, he would be 2-0 going into this matchup. Dropping to CLD back in March 2025. And then he got a relatively lucky win against Nick Klein, which has ultimately earned him this fight, which is... could potentially be the worst thing that's ever happened to you, but I don't mean to be dramatic, but I don't think we need to really break this fight down very much. The obvious pick is Ateba Gautier is going to go in there, and in round 1, he's going to really, really badly damage, break, and finish Andrey Pulyaev. And that is going to be the ultimate pick. We've got Francis Ngannou Part 2. They even look the fucking same. And I'm not... don't mean it like that, but... look at his fucking face. Look at his face. This is the reincarnation. And he's 23 years old. He's 23 years old. You know, we could have this guy. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But this guy's a scary motherfucker. He's one of the scariest prospects in the UFC currently. And I just think this is going to be a lamb to the slaughter. I am sorry, Andrey Pulyaev. Ateba Gautier, round 1 finish, is going to be the fairly obvious pick in this one. On that note, we're going to be moving on to the next matchup, which is... Can we just get a moment of silence for the fact that Umar Nurmagomedov versus Deiveson Figueiredo did not get moved to the main card after Amanda Nunes and Kayla Harrison got pulled? Because that's pretty telling to me. I think when you look at Natalia Silva versus Rose Namajunas and Umar Nurmagomedov versus Deiveson Figueiredo, all that this seems to be telling me is the UFC seem to be prioritising the winner of the Rose fight over the winner of the Umar Figgy fight in terms of who's going to be getting the next title shot. And I bet Umar's pissed. And seeing Sean O'Malley up there, but hey, who are we to judge? We're just going to be breaking down the fights. Now, fun fact about this fight, Deiveson Figueiredo is actually coming into this fight as the biggest underdog for a former UFC champion, and he's coming into this fight as a plus 800 underdog. Meaning if you bet $100, you're getting 800 quid back. Now the question is it worth the punt? Now, Deiveson Figueiredo just beat Montel Jackson, and he was an underdog going into that fight as well at plus 265. Now, the question is he going to be able to pull it off as an underdog in this fight? I think not. I think Umar Nurmagomedov is probably only going to lose to 2 fighters in the bantamweight division. I think he'd lose to Yan, and we know that he's already lost to Merab. And I think Merab at this stage has his number until Father Time takes over and he potentially gets a fluky one where he can get that win back later on in the future when Merab is 45,000 years old. Now, looking into this matchup, one of the main things and the main takeaways is how much of a massive, massive difference in speed between these two fighters there are. Umar Nurmagomedov is very, very fast, very, very light on his feet, really, really good movement, really, really good footwork, and he throws kicks very, very quickly. And the kicks that he throws is just one part of his game. He has an elite game. He can do it all. He's part of the Nurmagomedov family, so obviously he can grapple. And I think in terms of the fight, that's probably Figueiredo's only path to victory. I don't see Figueiredo knocking out Umar because he's just not quick enough. I mean, ask yourself the question, is Figueiredo going to be able to land heavy, hard, and fast enough to starch Umar? Now, I know Umar got dropped by Beksat Almakhan, and if you look at Beksat's recent career, he's only lost to people with the last name Nurmagomedov and Topuria. That's saying something. I just think that Umar beats Figgy everywhere. He's much faster. He's much more explosive at this stage in his career. Figueiredo, at one point in time, was one of the most devastating flyweight champions of all time. One of the scariest flyweight champions of all time. But that time is gone, and especially at the top of the bantamweight division, when you're 38 years old with a massive, massive wealth of fights behind you, massive, massive wealth of damage behind you. He's fought 31 times in his career professionally at this stage, and he's facing Umar Nurmagomedov, who is hungry, who now has momentum, fresh off of a win against Mario Batista, and people were rating Batista highly. I think this is going to be a pretty clear-cut tale of speed and technique, and I think Umar's just going to be able to implement that way, way better. I don't think Figueiredo's even going to be able to get any of his grappling exchanges off. I don't think Figueiredo's going to be able to get any takedowns on Umar, and I think we're just going to see Umar Nurmagomedov cruise to a very easy decision win over 3 rounds. 30-27 in favour of Umar Nurmagomedov. Umar Nurmagomedov by decision is going to be the obvious pick here. We're going to be moving swiftly on to the undisputed, undeniable, most exciting fight at UFC 324, and that is going to be between my boy Arnold Allen and my other boy John Silva. Oh, I hate watching my 2 favourite fighters fight. I hate watching 2 of my favourite fighters fight. Shout out Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria. I'm not forgetting you boys, but Arnold Allen and Gene Silva, oh my god, this just seems like one of those fights. As I said in a previous video, right? We saw it with Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje. We saw it with Paulo Costa versus Yoel Romero. There's certain fights that get match made that you just know are going to be absolute fucking barn burners before they even happen. And this is the perfect example of it. Arnold Allen is an absolute monster. Gene Silva is an absolute monster. Both of these monsters live on different sides of the autistic spectrum. And when they come together, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe the world's going to implode. I don't know. The odds have Gene Silva as a pretty significant favourite. He's a minus 300 favourite. Arnold Allen is a plus 230 underdog. All I'm saying is that if we're looking at odds, if you're a betting man or woman or thing, whatever the fuck you are, if you like to bet, consider throwing some cheddar on Arnold Allen. Oh my god, this is such a fucking sick fight, dude. Such a sick fight. Such a crazy wild fight. And I'm absolutely prolonging this pick. I don't know who I'm going to pick. Gene Silva was looking like the momentum was turning in his favour when he fought Diego Lopez before he got finished. And Gene Silva has carried that mentality. And I don't know if you've been keeping up with Gene Silva and Gene Silva's Instagram, but most people seem to shy away from losses. Most people don't really like to mention. Gene Silva has posted the video of Diego Lopez knocking him out so many fucking times. So many times since Noche UFC. This guy has made it part of his character arc. This guy, as I said, different sides of the spectrum. Arnold Allen, yeah, quite nice, unassuming. Yeah. So, oh yeah, happy birthday, man. We've got Arnold Allen, who's just like the fucking... How can you not love Arnold Allen? And then you've got Gene Silva, who barks at people. Gene Silva barks at people. Happy birthday, Nan. What I'm going to say, I am going to go with Gene Silva. I am going to pick Gene Silva. Arnold Allen. I know we DM now and then, but I cannot let my biases overtake who I think is going to win, because if Arnold Allen wins, then I think this might just be one of the biggest stock gains that we've seen within the past few years in the UFC. If Arnold Allen goes out there as a plus 230 underdog, beats Gene Silva, because if you look at this fight, the way that either of these guys are going to win is, unless Gene Silva manages to submit Arnold Allen, which I don't think he will, the way that either of these guys are going to win is going to be by brutal damage-based finish TKO. I don't think that there'll be a flatline KO in this fight. I think this will be a brutal, gritty, back and forth war where one person overtakes the other in terms of momentum. I feel like they are just going to go head to head. And I think they're both game for it. And I think ultimately, I am going to be picking Gene Silva to win. I think Gene Silva by decision has probably got some decent odds. I think Gene Silva by decision probably has some decent odds just based on the fact that These guys are known to go to war. As I said, I think this is going to be a back and forth. And I think if we see a finish, I would say that it's going to be late in the fight, maybe round 3. But I think ultimately it's going to go to a decision. And I think both of these guys are going to have very high stocks after these fights. I think they're going to both put on a very good showcase of themselves. You know, I don't think it's unlikely that we see both of these guys covered in blood, holding each other's hands up in the air at the end of round 3. I think Gene Silva probably has a very slightly higher chance of winning this one. But if Arnold Allen wins, I'm happy. If Gene Silva wins, I'm happy. This is by far the best fight on this card. I'm so excited for this fight. Shout out Gene Silva. Shout out Arnold Allen. This is going to be insane. Damn. Moving on to the next fight. We have got Natalia Silva versus Vic Blends. Natalia Silva versus Rose Namajunas. Now, old guard, new guard, right? Pretty clear cut. If you've been watching Natalia Silva as of late, she's been fucking everyone up, dude. She's been fucking everyone up. She fucked up Alexa Grasso. She fucked up Jessica Andrade. She fucked up Vivian Araújo. She fucked up Adriana Lee. She fucked up Victoria Leonardo. And the list goes on. She's currently 7-0 in the UFC. She's currently on a 13-fight win streak. All in that time, she's beaten 2 former champions. And not only has she beaten 2 former champions, she beat them up pretty fucking badly. Natalia Silva, from the moment the bell goes, is quick. She's on her feet. She's fucking moving. And she's got some of the best kicks, if not the best kicks, in WMMA. Right? Am I wrong? I don't think so. And she's facing Rose Namajunas. Now, for a period of time, Rose was the person to beat. I don't know if you guys have been following MMA on Instagram and on socials for very, very long, or if you've been a diehard fan for years, but one of the very first viral clips that I saw on social media making the rounds, getting millions of views, was the whole Rose Namajunas versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. The mean one versus the nice one. The sensitive fucking skinhead versus the Polish monster, you know? And then she won. Aura, you hear all of this shit. You whack the music on, you stick it on a reel, 20 million views. I mean, when you look at their records, I know Natalia Silva has fought more times than Rose. Rose has fought professionally 21 times. And Natalia Silva has 25 professional fights. But it's fairly obvious that you can't dispute the wealth of experience between the two, right? Rose Namajunas has been in the mix at the top of the division for years now. And Natalia Silva seems like And Natalia Silva, although, as mentioned, she beat 2 former champions recently, it seems like she's not really that widely recognised. And I think going hand in hand with that, I think this will be ultimately Natalia Silva's coming out party. I think she's way too quick for Rose Namajunas. I don't think Rose is going to be able to get any takedowns. I don't think Rose is going to be able to beat her in the stand-up. And just 2 years ago, Rose struggled and lost to Manon Fiorot, which was predominantly a stand-up fight. I know she fucked up her finger in that fight, but Fiorot beat her on the feet. And in my opinion, Natalia Silva is a much better striker than Manon Fiorot. Come at me if you want, I don't give a fuck. Natalia Silva is a much better stand-up fighter than Manon Fiorot. Natalia Silva is the best stand-up fighter in the women's flyweight division. And I think if Rose can't get her down to the ground, we're just going to see Natalia Silva style on Rose Namajunas over 3 rounds. And in my personal opinion, I don't see any other outcome other than that. Unless Rose gets a takedown, but I don't think that's going to happen. Especially not an out-of-prime Rose Namajunas. Tell me I'm wrong. Ultimately, the pick is going to be Natalia Silva by decision, and Natalia Silva is going to style on Rose Namajunas. I'm going to see a very high-pressure stand-up game from Natalia Silva. She's not going to let Rose breathe. I don't think she's going to get a finish, but I say Natalia Silva by decision is a very obvious pick to go for here. Moving swiftly on from the lightest fight of the card to the heaviest fight of the card, we got Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus Derrick Lewis. Now, I don't know what the fuck they've been feeding Derrick Lewis, but I do not remember Derrick Lewis's last fight looking like this. God damn, that boy's looking beefy. Derrick Lewis is back fighting Waldo Cortes-Acosta, who will be fighting for the 6th time in a calendar year. I believe that makes him the most active heavyweight in the whole of UFC history. I can't fucking wait for this one. I think this is going to go one of 2 ways. Derrick Lewis by knockout, Waldo Cortes-Acosta by knockout. I just don't see a situation that this even possibly goes to a decision, right? If this goes to a decision, the game's gone. If this goes to a decision, the game's gone. Now, Waldo Cortes-Acosta is carrying a crazy amount of momentum here. He's won his last 7 out of 8 fights, and the majority of those happened within the last couple of years, right? He did lose to Sergey Pavlovich last year, but he lost by decision. And in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the year that Waldo Cortes-Acosta had last year, arguably the breakout fighter of the year, because before, people were giving him shit. People were giving him shit. He fought Sergey Spivak and he was emoting whilst doing fuck all. People weren't really on his case. Then he fought Sergey Pavlovich, went to a decision when everyone thought that he was just going to finish him. And he gained a shit ton of momentum. Since then, KO'd Ante Dalia, KO'd Shamil Gaziev. And he's looking to get another finish over a Derrick Lewis, a 40-year-old Derrick Lewis. However, one thing to mention, we're in 2026. Derrick Lewis is on a 2-fight win streak, man. He's on a 2-fight win streak. Question is he going to be able to make it 3-0 as he faces Waldo Cortes-Acosta, who is 6 years younger, who has significantly better footwork, who is significantly faster, who has much better boxing, who has a much better cardio, who's coming in as a minus 325 favourite. And for that reason alone, we're saying Derrick Lewis by fucking K. No, I'm joking. We are going to be picking Waldo Cortes-Acosta. And I think this is just going to be a fun for the family kind of matchup. You know what I'm saying? Everyone's happy. Everyone's happy with this one. If Derrick Lewis wins, the Black Beast's back. We're going to see Derrick Lewis take off his shorts in Vegas again. No Jones. And if Waldo wins, we got Waldo Cortes-Acosta title run, GOAT run right now. Put him up against Aspinall. You know what I'm saying? Fuck Cyril Gahn. We don't want to see him back in there, the fucking... Waldo Cortes-Acosta's putting together a really, really nice resume in the heavyweight division. He's active. More active than anyone else in history. And he's getting big wins. One thing to note, he did get hit very, very hard against Ante Dalia. And if Derrick Lewis lands exactly the same that Dalia did, Cortes-Acosta's going down. And he might be staying down. He might be staying down. But the question is Derrick Lewis going to be able to pull that off? Is Derrick Lewis fast enough and accurate enough? I don't know. He's won his last 2. I don't know. He won his last 2 and he won his last 2 by KO. So they've both got momentum. They're both going into this fight. The likelihood is that no one's making out of the first round. One of them's going to sleep. One of them's going to get hit really, really hard. And one of them's going to go down. And I believe Waldo Cortes-Acosta is going to land on Derrick Lewis. And I think there may be a chance that Derrick Lewis doesn't fight again. Very simple matchup. Someone goes to sleep. Who's it going to be? I'm saying Derrick Lewis goes to sleep. Waldo Cortes-Acosta is going to be the pick, and we're going to be picking him to win via round 1 knockout. What do you know? Moving on to the co-main event of the evening. We have got Sean O'Malley versus Song Yadong. I am a recently converted Song Yadong fan. I don't know if many of you guys watched him go on DJ's YouTube channel and speak some English. He's just so fucking likable. Song Yadong's so fucking likable, dude. I think arguably much more likable than Sean O'Malley, but this is not about likability. This is about pure skill. Now, Sean O'Malley is coming into this fight as a relatively big favourite. He's a minus 210 favourite. Song Yadong is a plus 170 underdog. And it seems like a lot of people are just picking Sean O'Malley to win this fight, which is a very fair assumption. But I think the main question to ask here is, where is the bigger gap? The gap in striking between these two, or the gap in grappling between these two? And I think once you get your answer with that, it gives you a better idea of who's going to win. Now, ultimately, I would suggest that, yeah, the gap in striking is more significant within these two than the gap in grappling. But it's really worth noting that we hear it all the time. You see it with McGregor, you hear it all the time. Once these guys get a little bit of money, once these guys get a lot of money, the hunger subsides a little bit. And if you're facing someone who hasn't had championship status, who is trying their hardest to work their way up in the ranks, get to a position where they are in the spot for a title shot, sometimes the gap in hunger can overtake a gap in skill. You know, not everyone shows up on the night. Sean O'Malley has had a significant difficulty when it comes to facing grapplers in the recent part of his career. And although Song Yadong is primarily a striker, he can grapple. And he can implement his grappling. The question is Sean O'Malley's footwork and elusiveness going to be too much for Song Yadong in terms of actually succeeding in implementing his grappling skills and his wrestling? And when you look at the odds, I don't know if it's telling the complete truth, because I can definitely see a scenario where Song Yadong goes out there, imposes his physicality, imposes his will, and takes Sean O'Malley to a decision. Now, if we look at the decision outcomes, the likelihood is that we're not going to see Song Yadong outstrike Sean O'Malley. I think that's a given at this stage, right? I think if we're going to a decision, you've either got Sean O'Malley masterclass in the striking, or you've got Song Yadong mixing it up and imposing his will and making it dirty, grinding in the grappling, making Sean O'Malley tired. And I don't think it's as unlikely to imagine in terms of putting him as a minus 210 favourite. I think if you're looking at an underdog to choose, Song Yadong's a great pick. Ultimately, I would suggest that Sean O'Malley's probably going to be able to evade all of the advances of Song Yadong. And I think if Song Yadong wants to win, he has to mix it up. The question is he going to be able to mix it up against Sean O'Malley? I think specifically after going 2 hard fights against Merab, one where he got finished, one where he got embarrassed, Sean O'Malley's going to be really working on his grappling. And Sean O'Malley's going to be prioritising not letting his opponents get him to the ground, exploit his grappling weaknesses. I think O'Malley is going to continuously circle around the outside, picking his shots from range, and I don't think Song Yadong's going to be able to close that void in order to get within range to either land significant damage on Sean O'Malley or put himself into an advantageous position where he can implement his grappling. What I'd be interested to see is whether or not the recent losses to Merab, the 2 recent losses to Merab, is going to negatively affect Sean O'Malley to the point where he can't perform in this fight. Because I think if he can continuously move and pick his shots, pop him from range, not let Song Yadong get into range, then I think we're probably going to see a fairly vintage Sean O'Malley performance here. I don't necessarily think that we're going to see a KO. I think it's going to be a high volume fight where Sean O'Malley comes out on top, potentially winning 2 out of the 3 rounds. I think Song Yadong might be able to get in, might be able to get him down, might be able to hold him down for a period of time. But I think ultimately, while Yadong might win a round here, as I said, I think we're going to see a vintage Sean O'Malley, and I think he's probably going to win by decision here. Sean O'Malley by decision is going to be the pick here. Although, shout out Song Yadong, we are new Song Yadong fans. And that brings us on to the main event of the evening, UFC 324, main event, Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett. Now, people were indifferent about this fight. People were indifferent about this fight for very valid reasons. Arman Tsarukyan is not involved in an interim title fight at lightweight in 2026. Arman Tsarukyan has competed 7 times, whether it's MMA, jiu-jitsu, grappling, wrestling. He's been active. He's been proving himself. He pulled out of the Makhachev fight. Questions were being asked at that point in time. But I think overall, the whole MMA community are in agreement when they say Arman Tsarukyan should be fighting for this belt. Now, the question is, who should he be fighting? Should it be Justin Gaethje or Paddy Pimblett? Ultimately, it doesn't fucking matter because these 2 are the ones who are fighting. Arman has to sit out on the outside and he's going to have to wait. We've seen Ilia Topuria tweeting recently saying that he's going to be fighting the winner of this fight. So, moment of silence for Arman Tsarukyan. Anyway, talking about this fight, we have got a very underrated fight. Now, a couple of things I do want to mention, and it's 2 negative points, and you can compare them however you want. The first and foremost is that Paddy Pimblett has not got a single top 10 win within the lightweight division. On the flip side, Justin Gaethje has won 3 out of his last 5. Now, I've maintained that this matchup is a tale of 2. We either see Paddy Pimblett get chinned because his chin is out in the air, or we see Justin Gaethje get submitted because his grappling defense is not that good. And a third thing to note is that this motherfucker's been vaping. Paddy Pimblett's not planning on going late into the fight, dude. Paddy Pimblett is not planning on fighting late within this one. This is a tough one. This is a tough one because not too long ago we saw Justin Gaethje get put into an inverted triangle by Rafael Fiziev. We saw Justin Gaethje get put into an inverted triangle by Rafael fucking Fiziev. Now, maybe that's because he wasn't thinking, I'm going to get submitted by Rafael Fiziev. He's a striker. He's a Muay Thai guy. He's not going to go for a submission. So I don't have to be as conscious and as alert when it comes to hitting the mat. And maybe that'll be a different story when he faces Paddy Pimblett. Different priorities, right? He's probably not going to be worried so much about the striking as he was when he fought Rafael Fiziev. However, on the flip side, not too long ago, we saw Paddy Pimblett kind of fail on getting a takedown against Tony Ferguson. And worth noting, the majority of the time when Pimblett gets his opponents to the ground, he is not shooting straight takedowns. He's getting them up against the fence and he's looking for judo throws. And Justin Gaethje has somewhat good wrestling defense. You know, D1 wrestler, everyone always talks about that. Gaethje is very good at keeping it on the feet. The problems come when he hits the ground. And the question in this one is Paddy going to be able to get him down? Because from an outside perspective, you would assume that Paddy Pimblett's probably not going to outstrike Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje outstruck Figueiredo twice. Justin Gaethje KO'd Dustin Poirier with a head kick in 2023. So it begs the question, if Paddy doesn't get him down, has he got enough on the feet to be able to win the fight? Pimblett's coming into this fight as a -235 favourite. Is that a bit wide? I know Justin Gaethje's 36 years old, but I think this fight should probably be closer to a pick'em. It's no secret that these guys' competitions have been massively different on their come-ups. Paddy Pimblett has been one of the most privileged fighters on his come-up to a title shot. And I think because of that, there's always going to be the questions. Pimblett is always going to get hate. It doesn't matter if he wins against Justin Gaethje. The narratives are always going to be there. Oh, you had an easy way up and you had 36-year-old Justin Gaethje. So it's a tough situation for Pimblett here. If he wins, he gets hate. If he loses, he's definitely getting hate. The question is he going to be able to avoid the damaging shots of Justin Gaethje and win the fight? I think this fight is as simple as this. If Paddy Pimblett tucks his chin and doesn't get hit, he has the tools to be able to win. He fought Michael Chandler, he dominated Michael Chandler, and he looked like he had more of a significantly improved striking defense in that fight. He beat the shit out of Michael Chandler. Plain and simple. And he's shown a massive improvement since his UFC debut. Justin Gaethje's always been good. Justin Gaethje came into the UFC as an undefeated fighter, and he's had pretty much fight of the night bonuses in every single one of his fights since, I believe. I think that's still the case. I think at this stage, in terms of Paddy's game, he's well aware of the chin. He's well aware that his chin was up. And it's improved. It's definitely improved. Question is it improved enough for him to not get hit and starched out by Justin Gaethje? Because Justin Gaethje's turning Tiger Muay Thai striking coaches into wrestlers. I think ultimately Paddy is going to win. I think what's going to happen in this fight, I think it's going to get scrappy. And I think Justin Gaethje's going to have an opportunity to KO Paddy. And I don't think he's going to be able to get it. And I think during the exchanges, I think Paddy might be able to tie him up against the fence and get him down in that way. And I think if it hits the floor, I do think it's wraps. I think if it hits the floor, Paddy's going to be active and I think he's going to be successful. I do believe there's going to be a feeling out process, and I think that feeling out process is probably going to last a few rounds. I think if Paddy's going to win, we're going to be looking at a round 3, round 4 sub. I know I said the shit about vaping earlier, but I don't know when that video was. Whether it was fight week or not, the video just surfaced this week. But I think Pimblett's going to be able to take Justin Gaethje into the later rounds. I think the age discrepancy is going to be more significant than people are probably thinking. I know there was the viral clip of Paddy saying that Justin Gaethje's only fucking 2 years older than Danaher. We all know that one. But I do think the age discrepancy is going to be a thing. And if no one knew, I know Volkan Pantoja kind of put the end to the whole 35-year curse. But Justin Gaethje's going into a title fight at 37 years old. I'm just saying. I think ultimately Paddy Pimblett's going to win. I think Paddy Pimblett might get a late sub and or decision. And I think if he wins a decision, it's just going to be just enough on the feet, mixing and grappling to come away with a fairly close decision win. And I think all in all, we're going to see Paddy Pimblett with his hand raised, with the interim title, ready to take on the super fight with Ilia Topuria at the White House. And I think the UFC are going to fucking love that. And I think it's going to be red panty night in Dana White's house. Gaethje could flatline him. We could see Paddy Pimblett trash talking gone wrong on the compilations. Scousers don't get knocked out. Cut to Paddy face down. But yeah, I just don't really see that happen. And I think Paddy Pimblett Paddy Pimblett is going to win to cap off the first pay-per-view, the first event of 2026. And new Paddy Pimblett. There we go. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.